Russell Westbrook has officially called time on his NBA career after 18 seasons in the league. He suited up for 7 different franchises, won the 2017 MVP award, and leaves basketball as the all-time leader in triple-doubles with 209.
Top 5 greatest point guard of all time. When you talk about Russell Westbrook, we're talking about one of the all-time.
Russell Westbrook retired on Wednesday, and somehow the way he announced it felt like one of the biggest statements of his entire career. He released a video narrated from start to finish by Michael B. Jordan, taking viewers through Russ's 18 seasons, his triple-doubles, his MVP, and eventually looking ahead to what comes next, mentoring others, his foundation, and the younger generation that will grow up wanting to play with the same intensity he did. But then, right at the end, Jordan asks Westbrook a question. He asks, "Now that you've decided to step away on your own terms, what are you the most proud of?" And Russ never responds, not one word. That's what makes it so striking, especially coming from one of the most outspoken superstars of his generation. We've all seen the memes, the reactions, and the moments that...
Bro, what are you talking about, man? I'm out, man. I'm tripping.
You have it for the next man. Keep having fun, bro. Win.
This is probably the most emotional, outspoken, and in-your-face basketball player I've watched in my entire life. And somehow he let someone else deliver his goodbye. The only words Russ personally gave us were in the caption. Sometimes you don't even know when you've already watched the end. You had to be there. And now it's over. And if you've been following my YouTube channel for a while, you already know I almost never make videos about players retiring. I did cover Tom Brady's retirement on Mic Check, but come on, man, that's Tom freaking Brady. Usually, by the time an NBA superstar retires, they've become somewhat irrelevant during the final stage of their career. You could have made that argument about Westbrook too. He was putting up what some people would call empty numbers in Sacramento, so how important was the final chapter of his career? But the reason I'm talking about Russ now is because he essentially had to make a decision about retirement. He had opportunities available, but he chose not to take them, and that's what we're getting into here. Before we jump into that, we just released a wild video about NBA players declaring for the WNBA draft. I'll leave that on the end screen because I really want you guys to check it out. We put a ton of work into it, and it's over on my third channel, Flight Mike TV, since it's more about culture than straight basketball. With that out of the way, let's roll the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's good, everybody? My last Russell Westbrook video was based around the idea that his phone simply wasn't ringing because nobody wanted him. But on Wednesday, Shams reported that Westbrook actually received offers this offseason from the Sacramento Kings and Washington Wizards, and ultimately decided to walk away from the NBA on his own terms. And honestly, Washington was not a terrible option. He could have served as Trae Young's backup, reunited with Anthony Davis, and joined a young Eastern Conference team that I could realistically see competing for a playoff spot, or at least reaching the play-in. Yet Russ turned down both opportunities. Maybe there's something going on between him and Anthony Davis. I have no idea. But what matters is that teams did reach out, and I previously said they hadn't, so I want to correct that from my last video. This is the accurate version, and you could actually argue that it makes the situation even more interesting. Sacramento is also a completely different situation from the team Westbrook previously played for. Remember, they selected Darius Akoff in the draft. This is the same Kings organization that finished 22-60 last season, so put yourself in Russ's shoes. You're a 37-year-old former MVP. Do you really want to spend another season backing up a rookie guard on a team that just lost 60 games? That's the key. The offers were there. They just weren't opportunities for Russell Westbrook to be Russell Westbrook. A 37-year-old former MVP who averaged 15 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds only a few months ago, looked around the league, saw those two options, and decided retirement was preferable. So the conversation changed. Instead of asking why nobody wanted to sign him, we now have to ask why those were the only 2 choices available. His own agent addressed that on the morning Westbrook announced his retirement, and honestly, it tells a much bigger story than just what happened to Russ. But before we get into who played a role in all of this, let's give the man his flowers. 18 seasons, 1,331 games, 20.9 points, 8 assists, 6.9 rebounds, and 1.6 steals per game across his career. Westbrook walks away 5th all-time in assists. 5th. The only players ahead of him are John Stockton, Chris Paul, Jason Kidd, and LeBron James. He also ranks 14th on the NBA's all-time scoring list with 27,176 points, with only LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and James Harden among active players ahead of him. Then there's the statistic that will probably follow him forever. He has the 4th most points ever scored by a player who never won an NBA championship. And when it comes to triple-doubles, he sits alone at the top. In 2016-17, Westbrook became the first player since Oscar Robertson in 1961-62 to average a triple-double over an entire season. He finished with 31.6 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists per game, won MVP over James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, and did it during one of the more debated MVP races in recent memory. I'll admit that. And here's another stat I absolutely love. Russell Westbrook remains the Oklahoma City Thunder's all-time franchise leader in points, assists, rebounds, and steals, every single one. This is an organization that won a championship without him 2 years ago, yet his name still sits at the top of every major statistical category. So how does a player with that kind of resume go from being an all-time great to receiving 2 unfavorable offers before ultimately retiring? Well, it took roughly 7 years, and you can break that journey into 3 different chapters. Chapter 1 is loyalty, and this is the part people tend to overlook. In the summer of 2016, Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City for Golden State. Most people assumed Russ would eventually demand a trade too. He didn't. Instead, he signed an extension at one of the most vulnerable points in franchise history. Then he helped recruit Paul George to Oklahoma City. That's a huge reason why the city never turned on him the way much of the rest of the basketball world did. When Westbrook returned to Oklahoma City in 2020 wearing a Rockets uniform, the organization played a tribute video for him, and the arena absolutely erupted. Russ even gave them a little bit of classic Westbrook pettiness afterward. When Kevin Durant talked that year about loving to play around people who were selfless and played the game the right way, somebody in OKC brought those comments back to Russ, and his response was basically, "That's cute, man." Then he followed it up by saying, "We gon' worry about all the selfish guys we got over here. Apparently, we gon' figure that out." And after that, he made it clear he was finished discussing it. Honestly, I'm really tired talking about it. That might be Russell Westbrook's entire personality compressed into about 10 seconds, and he had the performances to back it up. During that same period, he exploded for a 51-point.
10 rebound, 13 assist, triple-double in a playoff matchup against James Harden's Rockets. 51 points while recording a triple-double in the postseason against the same player who would win MVP the following year. Westbrook was carrying a roster that probably had no business being in that position, and he still refused to admit otherwise. Then comes Chapter 2, the fall. Houston, Washington, the Lakers, the Clippers, Denver, Sacramento, 7 teams across his final 7 seasons. But the Lakers chapter is where his reputation really took a beating. That 33-49 season became a complete disaster, with even his own hometown crowd chanting Westbrook at him inside crypto. He's your biggest fan. Westbrook had made 4 Western Conference Finals alongside Durant and reached 1 NBA Finals. But after 2019, he never made it beyond the second round again. Chapter 3 is the part of the story that I don't think gets nearly enough attention. I covered it pretty extensively in the previous video, so I won't go through every detail again, but Russell Westbrook actually rebuilt himself. He received 6th Man of the Year votes in 3 straight seasons, and then last year in Sacramento, at 37 years old, he averaged 15.2 points and 6.7 assists while starting 58 games. He also shot 33.8% from 3, making it his best 3-point shooting season since the year he won MVP. So he really did make the adjustment. He actually fixed the weaknesses people had been criticizing. And somehow, that version of Russ still ended up with only 2 offers he didn't want. So now we have to ask the bigger question. Why did he choose retirement? On the exact day Russell Westbrook announced that his career was over, his agency released a statement. And you need to know who was behind it, because this wasn't some random person speaking for him. Jeff Schwartz is the founder and CEO of Excel Sports Management. He's been one of the NBA's highest-ranked agents for nearly a decade, and his clients include Nikola Jokic, Kristaps Porzingis, Tyler Hero, and Cade Cunningham. Here's what he said. But first, there's some important context. The Lakers were just sold for $12.5 billion. If you somehow missed that story, it's a fascinating and pretty questionable sale, and I covered the whole situation in my last video. I'll put that on the end screen if you want to catch up. The reason it matters here is because Schwartz wrote, "It's incredible. The Lakers sell for $12 billion, yet teams won't spend on older vets because of current CBA rules. Thank you, union." Think about what that means. On the very day Russell Westbrook retired, his agent wasn't directing his frustration toward team owners or Adam Silver. He was pointing directly at the Players Union, the organization that's supposed to represent and protect the players. And before you dismiss that as one frustrated agent defending his client, look at who else Schwartz represents. Kevin Love, Kelly Olynyk, and Dwight Powell are also his clients, and all 3 remained unsigned in free agency at the time. Kevin Love is a 5-time All-Star and an NBA champion, yet nobody was calling him either. So that's 4 players represented by the same agent. 1 retired that day, while the other 3 were still waiting at home in August. And their agent is saying the problem comes from an agreement the players themselves signed. That's where this gets much more interesting, because Schwartz blaming the union wasn't some isolated rant. The union had already admitted there were problems with the system about a month earlier, and hardly anybody was talking about it. David Kelly is the executive director of the NBA Players Association, which is the highest position within the union. He took over that role this year, and during Summer League in July, he admitted that the union doesn't like the second apron, didn't propose it, and should have pushed back harder during negotiations. That's the head of the Players Association basically acknowledging that his own side got outplayed at the bargaining table. And he went even further. Speaking with Mike Verkunov of The Athletic, Kelly said the apron wasn't good for fans or players, and suggested that even general managers probably don't like it, despite being reluctant to say that publicly. He also said coaches weren't fans of it. Then came the most telling part. According to Kelly, the only group that really seemed to like the system was the owners. His overall conclusion was that the rules had gone too far. At the same time, Union President Fred Van Vliet was asked about the next round of CBA negotiations, and he made it clear they're already preparing for them, not sometime in 2029, right now. So let me break down what this system actually does. And yes, we have to spend a little time explaining the second apron. For anyone unfamiliar with how it works, the old luxury tax system was pretty straightforward. If you spent beyond the limit, you paid a penalty. Wealthy owners could simply absorb the cost and move on. The apron system is different because it doesn't just charge you more money, it removes options. Once you cross that threshold, teams can lose the ability to combine salaries and trades, lose exceptions, lose flexibility, and eventually even face restrictions involving future draft picks. You can't simply throw more money at the problem. The easiest solution is to stay below the line. And because of that, front offices aren't only thinking twice about expensive contracts anymore. They're thinking about every roster spot. Even a veteran on a minimum deal can become a problem if adding him pushes the team over the threshold. And once you're over, the things you lose aren't necessarily things you can buy back later. If you want to see what this looked like across the league this summer, Bobby Marks reported that not a single NBA team entered free agency with cap space. Of the 421 players under contract, 315 were already with the same team they played for the previous season, and only around 29 players across the entire league changed teams through free agency. 29. That's basically the entire market, and that's the market Russell Westbrook entered. Now, I do have to acknowledge the other side, because there is a legitimate argument here, and it's not a weak one. The system actually accomplished what it was designed to accomplish. 5 different franchises won championships over a 5-year span. The old super team era, where 3 all-stars could simply decide to team up in places like Miami, Boston, or Brooklyn, is essentially gone, and the apron played a major role in killing that model. If parity was the goal, then you got parity. Oklahoma City winning a championship with a homegrown roster is partly a result of these rules. The New York Knicks winning the championship last year is also connected to the same system. But the cost of that parity landed heavily on one particular group, players over 33 who aren't stars anymore but still have enough left to contribute. Those are the veterans who became easier to move or replace so the rest of the league could operate under a more balanced system, and nobody really warned them that this would be the trade-off. I also have to acknowledge the obvious conflict of interest with Shorts. I'm not going to sit here and pretend he's some completely neutral observer who suddenly developed a passion for veteran players. He's an agent, and agents earn a percentage of player contracts. A league where older veterans can secure larger deals naturally means more money for Jeff Schwartz. He obviously understands that. But having a financial interest doesn't automatically mean someone is wrong. And when the head of the players' union is making many of the same criticisms, it's difficult to dismiss the entire argument as self-interest. In my previous video, I compared the situation to Allen Iverson in 2010, but I want to walk that comparison back, because I don't think it really works anymore. Iverson couldn't get a team to call because organizations looked at him and decided he was finished. That was a basketball evaluation. Maybe they were wrong, but teams were making a judgment based on what they saw from the player. Russell Westbrook's situation was different. Teams apparently believed he could still contribute. Sacramento wanted him back. Washington made an offer. The problem was that neither team could give him anything resembling the kind of role you'd expect for a former MVP, because the financial structure made it difficult. Same result, completely different reason. One was about evaluating a player's ability. The other is about the rules surrounding the roster. So here's where I stand now, and I've changed my position a little since that previous video. I originally told you that nobody wanted Russell Westbrook. That wasn't accurate, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Teams did call. Sacramento called, Washington called. But the best opportunities available to a former MVP who had just averaged 15 points were essentially a backup role behind a rookie on a team that had lost 60 games, at the minimum. And Russ decided, no thanks. Personally, I don't believe Russell Westbrook retired because he was incapable of playing basketball anymore. I think he retired because the only version of the NBA job still available to him wasn't something he wanted. And the reason that was the version available may come down to a system he owners wanted, the players agreed to, and the head of the players union now believes went too far. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Did Russell Westbrook actually retire, or did the new CBA retire him? I really want to hear your take. And if you haven't seen it yet, NBA players are declaring for the WNBA draft. And